Next is the role of reminders or retrieval cues in long-term memory. Retrieval refers to the process of reactivating or remembering information that has been stored in memory. Any stimulus that helps us to remember is called retrieval cue or reminder. A good example is photograph. When we see a photograph, we can remember the experiences associated with that photograph very easily. We are more likely to be able to retrieve items from memory when conditions at retrieval are similar to the conditions under which we encoded them or learned them. That means if there is a match between the two contexts, the context of learning and the context of retrieval or remembering, then we can remember more. That memory is known as context dependent memory. If possible, you all should study under conditions similar to the condition in which you have exam. So you can remember well in exam and can write answer to the question very easily. Next is state dependent retrieval or state dependent memory. We have better retrieval or recall when we are in the same psychological state as we were when we learned the material, or it refers to the superior retrieval of information when the individual is in same physiological or psychological state as during encoding or learning. Match in the external situation between learning and remembering improves our memory. And studies reported that people who learn information when they are in a bad mood find it easier to recall that information when they are in bad mood, and vice versa. It is easier to recall unpleasant memories than the pleasant memories when the people are in bad mood, and it is easier to recall the pleasant memories than the unpleasant memories when we are happy mood. That is state dependent memory. Variations in the ability to retrieve information are also seen in the serial possession effect, and this is very much studied by Ebbinghaus. He introduced a serial possession curve to explain this phenomenon. When we give people a list of words one at a time and then ask them to recall them, people are able to retrieve or recall more words that were presented at the beginning and at the end of the list than the words which are presented in the middle. This pattern is known as serial possession effect. There are two important recall or retrieval phenomenon associated with serial possession effect. First one is primacy effect, second is recency effect. Primacy effect refers to the tendency to better remember stimulus that are presented at the beginning of a list. The recency effect refers to the tendency to better remember stimuli that are presented at the end of a list. It's explained in terms of the effects of rehearsal in short-term and long-term memory. The ability to accurately identify the source of the memory is known as source monitoring. If we have no ability to identify the source of the memory, then source monitoring errors may happen. Perhaps you have had experience of wondering whether you really experienced an event or only dreamed or imagined it, whether this one real or imagined one, etc. If so, you wouldn't be alone. Studies reported that up to 25% of college students reported being confused about real versus dreamed event. And studies suggest that people who are fantasy prone are more likely to experience source monitoring errors. We have already discussed about constructive process and reconstructive process in long-term memory. Constructive process usually occurs at the time of encoding or learning, and reconstructive process occurs at the time of recall or remembering. So constructed or reconstructed memories can report false details of a real event, or might even be a recollection of an event that never occurred. And this is what is called false memory. We tend to construct parts of the memory to fill in gaps in our stories. And studies reported that leading questions can easily influence us to recall false details. And interrogators can create an entirely new memory by repeatedly asking insistent questions. Constructed memories feel like accurate memories to the person who is recalling them, and the person never understand that this is not this is a false memory and this is not the real memory, etc. The person feels that this is the actual memory or real memory, and the only way to differentiate between a false and the real memory is through other types of evidences like physical evidences or any other validated reports of the event. Next is metamemory. Metamemory is a sub-area of the area of metacognition. Metacognition refers to people's self-monitoring and self-control of their own cognitive processes. Metamemory refers to people's self-monitoring and self-control of their own memory process. and it is a knowledge and awareness of our own memory, including the contents and process of our memory. And this self-awareness of memory has important implication for how people learn and use their memory. Next is eyewitness testimony. It is actually a legal term. It refers to an account given by people of an event that have witnessed. For example, they may be required to give a description at a trial of a robbery or a road accident or a crime someone has seen. And this includes identification of perpetrators, details of the crime scene, etc. And juries also pay close attention to the eyewitness testimony and generally find it a reliable source of information. Sometimes mistakes may happen in eyewitness testimony because studies reported that eyewitness testimony can be affected by many psychological factors like anxiety or stress, leading questions by interrogators, reconstructive process at the time of recall, weapon focus by witness, etc. So these all things may influence eyewitness testimony. So in this class we have discussed on different processes involved in long-term memory, different types of memory and how we measure memory, and then reconstructive, constructive processes, eyewitness testimony, etc. So you have to study these topics well. We can meet in the next class. Okay, thank you.